Have you ever experienced a moment where you looked at a friend and all of a sudden they looked like a stranger? There's a name for that. And no, we can't explain it. Add in Silkhenges, Precognition, Retrocognition, and something called choice blindness, and you've got far too many unexplainable things scientists still can't crack. Interested? Well, hit that like button and subscribe so I can keep bringing you lists like this. Let's get into it, because I'm Mike with List 25, and these are 25 unsolved mysteries that haunt modern science. 25. That thing called Jamais Vu. We've all experienced déjà vu before. That weird moment when you walk into a place or hear a phrase and all of a sudden it feels like you've experienced that moment before. Now, Jamais Vu is basically the exact opposite. It's when something is 100% familiar, but it suddenly feels brand new. For example, you could be having a chat with a friend and suddenly their face looks like that of a stranger. Or you walk into your office and it feels like you've never set foot in there in your life. The term itself means never seen in French, and scientists have been scratching their heads over this one for years. One explanation is that the brain's memory circuits briefly fall out of sync. The information is there, but the recognition system kind of falls behind, so everything familiar suddenly feels foreign. Another theory says it's more about your level of attention. When your focus slips, your brain effectively re-registers whatever you're seeing as if it's brand new. Whatever the cause, we're still trying to figure it out. 24. Okay, so what is Presque Vu? If Jamais Vu is disturbing, Presque Vu is 100% annoying. It's that crazy tip of the tongue moment when you know exactly what you're trying to say, but the word disappears or just won't come out. You can picture it, you can almost feel it, but it stays just out of reach. Hence its name, French for almost seen. It happens to over 90% of us, so it's actually crazy that we don't have more scientists studying it. Psychologists think it happens because your brain thinks of a similar wrong word first, like momentum instead of momentary, and that basically jams the system. What we do know is that the more you panic about it, the worse it gets, which is why the best thing is to just let it go. Odds are you'll remember the word a few hours later while you're busy with something completely unrelated. 23. When cancer just disappears. On rare occasions, cancer seems to break its own rules. A tumor that once looked unstoppable suddenly shrinks or disappears without any therapy. This phenomenon is called spontaneous regression, and we've been trying to find its mechanism for ages. One angle researchers are exploring is fasting. Some case studies have shown that tumors get smaller after prolonged fasting or dramatic diet changes. The idea is that fasting kicks off a process called autophagy, basically a cellular cleanup mode that clears damaged cells and pushes the body to renew healthier ones. It could also boil down to fuel. Starve the body of glucose or insulin, and you may also be starving the tumor. Still, that doesn't explain why spontaneous regression is so rare, or how the body decides when to fight back. 22. Zombie fires. Zombie fires are exactly what they sound like. Fires that seem to come back from the grave. And not just anywhere. I'm talking about the Arctic, especially in Alaska, Canada, and Siberia, often appearing in early May when the snow melts. The peculiar part is that some of these fires appear to be the same fires from the previous summer, which just smoldered underground through the winter for a couple of months. As you can imagine, there are several theories about how it happens, but scientists can't seem to find a consensus. According to the main theory, peat, which is dense and packed with carbon, burns quietly below the surface for months, insulating itself from heat and moisture until warmer, drier conditions reignite it. In 2021, satellite data actually confirmed that a lot of these fires started up where the previous seemed to end. However, other researchers believe that the warmer air temperatures may heat the ground enough to spark new ignition events in the spring, which only creates the illusion of old fires coming back to life. 21. The hole in the galaxy. NGC 247 is a spiral galaxy about 11 million light-years away, and it's famous for something astronomers call the void. One side of the galaxy is full of stars, but the other side looks like someone punched a hole through it. At first, scientists thought the gap might have been caused by gravity tugging from a neighboring galaxy. Later, some suggested it could even be the result of a past collision with dark matter, which would have disrupted gas clouds and shut down star birth in that region. Of course, the idea that caught most of the public's imagination came from SETI enthusiasts, who speculated that it could be the work of extraterrestrials building massive Dyson spheres, energy harvesting structures that surround stars. But it kind of goes without saying that that is 100% speculation. The truth is that the void's origin is still up in the air. Or up in space. There's no air in space. 20. Pons and Fleischmann's interesting claim. In 1989, two chemists, Stanley Pons and Martin Fleischmann, stunned everyone by announcing they'd pulled off nuclear fusion at room temperature using palladium electrodes and heavy water, so-called cold fusion. Now, if everything sciencey gives you a headache, let me just say that I'm talking about the same reaction that powers the sun, but happening in a tabletop setup. If they actually got it to work, it could have meant practically unlimited clean energy. The catch was that nobody else could recreate it. Most scientists chalked it up to error, and the claim was quickly dismissed. But here's where it gets interesting. Other researchers started noticing that similar experiments with palladium in heavy water sometimes gave off bursts of heat or even left traces of nuclear byproducts. And labs in Japan, Italy, and the US have all reported odd results over the years, which is why cold fusion has never fully disappeared. None of it fits with what physical science said should be possible, and yet some people argue it was dismissed too quickly, pointing out that entire industries would have had everything to lose if it actually worked. 19. The Allais Effect. Pendulums aren't exactly the most exciting things to watch. They usually just swing to and fro, in the same rhythm, all the time. But in 1954, French physicist Maurice Allais watched his Foucault pendulum suddenly drift off its usual swing path during a solar eclipse, almost as if something invisible had tugged on it. And since that day, scientists have hauled out their pendulums and gravimeters for other eclipses, waiting for the same odd behavior. Sometimes they see the drift, other times they don't, which only makes it more confusing. According to physics, an eclipse shouldn't cause gravity or motion to suddenly change. Yet, Allais' little wobble keeps showing up just often enough to stop everyone from completely writing it off. 18. When people have hallucinations without drugs. When you stare at a blank wall or floor long enough, you'll eventually notice patterns, colors, or even images that don't exist. Your brain is wired to process input constantly, so when there's nothing new coming in, it just makes something up. It's known as the Ganzfeld effect, and the results can feel a lot like what people report on psychedelics. Some people see swirling colors. Others swear they see shapes or even faces that start to appear. At one point, parapsychologists even thought it might help prove psychic powers, but mainstream science didn't exactly line up behind that idea. What they did agree on was simple. The visions people see are genuine, but why they're so vivid and why different people see different things remains one of the stranger gaps in our understanding of perception. 17. Electrophonic Meteors. People have reported hearing meteors at the exact moment they flash across the sky, not minutes later or after the boom, right then. And what they're describing isn't like an explosion, it's more of a hiss or a faint sizzle. That shouldn't be possible. Sound travels slower than light, so if a meteor streaks by dozens of miles up, any real noise from it shouldn't reach you for a good while. Scientists think it's got something to do with very low frequency electromagnetic waves. When a meteor burns through the upper atmosphere, it might emit these waves, which travel at the speed of light and interact with nearby materials like glass, hair, or dry leaves, turning them into tiny speakers. Lab experiments have recreated the effect, but we're still missing the full picture. 16. Choice blindness. Let's say you choose something. Chocolate over vanilla, photo A over photo B. You feel good about that choice. Now, what if someone swaps it behind your back and you not only fail to notice, but confidently explain why you picked the new option? Choice blindness can be replicated in any lab. In fact, in one of the most famous studies, people were shown two faces and asked to choose the one they found more attractive. After they made their pick, the researchers secretly switched the photos. Most of the participants didn't notice. They just started defending the choice they never made. What researchers still can't explain is why we catch the swap when it's something personal or really important like a wedding dress, but let smaller choices slide without a fight. 15. Precognition. Have you ever known about something before it happened? There are thousands of people out there who swear they've predicted something before it came to be. A plane crash, a phone call, a global disaster that showed up in a dream days earlier. For example, some have claimed they sensed the World Trade Center attacks before they happened, describing vivid dreams or an unshakable feeling of dread in the days leading up to September 11th. The term for it is precognition, and its biggest problem is simple. It breaks the rule of cause and effect. If something hasn't happened yet, how can your brain respond to it? Most researchers blame it on memory errors, subconscious pattern recognition, or plain coincidence. In short, your brain connects dots that were never meant to go together. Even so, the stories keep coming, and science hasn't managed to close the book on it. 14. Retrocognition. Precognition also seems to have a mirror twin. People who say they saw an event from the past, something they never lived through, never studied, and never had any access to. Instead of seeing what's coming, you somehow see what's already happened. One of the most famous events people like to refer to is the 1901 Moberly-Jourdain incident. Two Englishwomen, Charlotte Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain, said they were walking through the gardens at Versailles when everything suddenly shifted. They described unfamiliar buildings, people in centuries-old clothing, and a bizarre stillness in the air. Later, they claimed that what they saw matched a map from 1783. Skeptics think they either filled in the blanks from memory or had already absorbed the history without realizing it. Unfortunately, there's no reliable way to test retrocognition at all. 13. What's behind the Outer Hebrides hum? A weird hum on the Isle of Lewis in the Outer Hebrides has been driving people up the wall. It's a low, constant sound that seems to hang in the air. Not everyone hears it, but for the 200 or so residents who do, it's relentless. Some say it keeps them from sleeping. Others report dizziness, headaches, or a fluttering in their ears that won't stop. The hum registers at 50 Hz and tends to be the strongest along the East Coast. People have tried to trace it for years and even tried linking it to cargo ships, generators, submarines, and a local sewing plant. Another person described it as what they imagine the Earth would sound like if it made noise while turning. As of 2025, locals say it's only getting louder, and no one, not scientists, engineers, nor the government, has been able to pinpoint where it's coming from. 12. The Silkhenges. In 2013, scientists in eastern Peru started noticing peculiar little silk structures popping up on tree trunks and leaves. At first glance, it looked similar to a bottle cap. But when scientists actually stopped to look, the layout didn't match anything they'd seen before. Each one had a tall central cone, surrounded by evenly spaced pillars. It looked like a miniature Stonehenge made out of spider silk. By 2019, entomologist Phil Torres had captured the video of one up close. The detail was stunning, but it still didn't answer any of the big questions. No one knows which spider builds these things, and no one has ever caught one in the act. It could be some kind of protection for an egg sac, but until someone sees it happen, well, that's just a guess. Shout out to Phil Torres from Expedition X. What's up, buddy? Totally know you're watching. Actually gotta watch that show when I'm done recording here. If you haven't seen Expedition X or Expedition Unknown with Josh Gates, highly recommend both. 11. What caused the Denmark tremors? In May 2023, islanders on the Danish island of Bornholm felt an earthquake strong enough to rattle their furniture. But when geologists reviewed the data, they found no signs of seismic activity. The ground moved, but science had nothing to show for it. Around the same time, more tremors were also reported across southern Sweden. And while a minor blast did take place in Poland that same day, the timeline between the two events didn't line up. You'd think that was strange enough, but it wasn't the first time this has happened. In 2018, seismic monitors picked up a ripple of waves that stretched from the coast of Mayotte to Hawaii. The signal lasted 20 minutes and circled the globe. No one felt a thing. Scientists are still reviewing the data, but the cause behind those movements remains unknown. 10. What are skyquakes? People all over the world have reported hearing loud, unexplained noises coming from the sky. Sometimes it's a deep boom that sounds like distant artillery. Other times it's more like a metallic trumpet echoing through the air. Scroll through enough social media feeds and you'll find recordings that would fit right into a Hollywood blockbuster. These events are called skyquakes, and they've been heard near coastlines, lakes, and even over major cities. The earliest account dates back to New Madrid, Missouri, where people reported thunderous blasts during an actual earthquake in the early 1800s. In New York, they're known as the Seneca guns. In Japan, they're called the uminari, cries from the sea. There's no single explanation. Scientists have blamed everything from shifting air pressure to underground gas bubbles to military aircraft, but nothing fully accounts for what people are hearing. 9. When sound creates light. If you blast a powerful sound wave through water, you'll get more than a ripple. Under the right conditions, it can trigger tiny bubbles that collapse and release a sudden flash of light. The entire event lasts just billionths of a second. The phenomenon is known as sonoluminescence, and it was first noticed in the 1930s when researchers were experimenting with sound in liquids. What you actually see is just a tiny flash, gone in an instant, but bright enough to make you wonder how a bubble could do that. Some researchers think the bubble gets so hot that it turns into glowing plasma. Others point to shockwaves or electrical sparks. Some have even gone so far as to try a link to fusion, but no one's confirmed it just yet. 8. The origins of complex eyes. Almost every animal has eyes. Insects, mollusks, fish, mammals, and dozens of other groups all have them. Scientists think they started out as tiny light-sensitive spots that slowly became more complex over time. The trouble is that this didn't just happen once. Eyes seem to have evolved at least 40 different times in completely unrelated species. Things get even creepier if you look back to the Cambrian explosion around 540 million years ago. Fossils from that period already show creatures with fully formed eyes, complete with lenses and retinas. That's hard to explain, because an eye only works if every part develops together. One missing piece, and the whole organ is useless. It keeps surprising us to this day. Some deep-sea fish have eyes that work where there's almost no light at all. So the way eyes keep reinventing themselves is probably one of nature's biggest mysteries. 7. The living fossils. The story of eyes shows us how fast evolution can move, but some creatures like horseshoe crabs, coelacanths, and a few shark species have also proven that it can stand completely still. These animals all look almost identical to their ancestors that lived hundreds of millions of years ago. The unusual explanation is stabilizing selection, where a body design is so effective that it doesn't really need a whole lot of tweaking. Yet that still leaves major questions. If other species were racing ahead, why didn't they leave ancient holdouts behind? What protected them from extinction while so many others disappeared? Some researchers think the answer might be hidden in subtle changes that don't fossilize, like shifts in chemistry or physiology. If that's true, these living fossils may not be as static as they seem. 6. Metamorphosis. Figuring out where eyes came from is tough enough, but nothing compares to the strangeness of metamorphosis. A caterpillar doesn't just grow wings. It literally dissolves into a soup of cells inside its chrysalis and then rebuilds itself into a butterfly or moth. Somehow, it even manages to carry over memories from its caterpillar life into the adult stage. Tracing the history of butterflies and moths gives us part of the picture, but no transitional fossils explain how such a radical process developed step by step. One idea is that insects evolved separate life stages to avoid competing with themselves. Caterpillars eat leaves, adults sip nectar, so the two don't battle over food. Another theory points to ancient parasitic lifestyles, with early larvae living inside plants or hosts until adulthood. Whichever path it took, the fact that an animal can liquefy its body and come out functional on the other side is a very neat trick. Get on it, magicians. Come on, David Blaine. Do it. Liquefy yourself. 5. Odd radio circles. In 2020, astronomers in Australia scanning the skies with the ASKP radio telescope picked up faint, ring-shaped signals that didn't look like anything they've ever seen before. These odd radio circles, or ORCs, are enormous, about 1 million light-years across, and most appear to be centered on distant galaxies. The catch is that they don't show up in visible light or X-rays, only in radio waves. That makes them almost impossible to compare with anything else we've studied. In fact, we've only found about a handful so far, which makes the mystery even harder to crack. They could be anything from the aftermath of colossal explosions in galaxies or jets shooting out from black holes to giant shockwaves spreading through intergalactic space. 4. Sleeping with half a brain. Whales and dolphins never switch off completely. Instead of shutting down both sides of the brain when they go to sleep, they rest one hemisphere at a time. While one side rests, the other stays awake enough to guide them to the surface for air, keep them moving, and watch for predators. Birds like swifts and ducks can do this too, especially when they sleep mid-flight or in exposed areas. Why evolution favored this in some creatures and not others is still debated. For marine mammals, the logic seems clear enough. A dolphin that sleeps too deeply risks drowning. A whale that ignores its surroundings risks an ambush. But that only explains part of it. Fish live underwater all the time, yet they don't use this trick. Reptiles spend long stretches in risky environments, and they don't either. What's most difficult to explain is how they alternate between the halves so smoothly, resting one hemisphere at a time, yet keeping their movement, memory, and awareness intact. 3. The Muon G2 anomaly. The Muon is like the electron's bigger, bulkier cousin. Okay, try to bear with me. I know we're not all science buffs, but scientists know exactly how it should behave thanks to their best rulebook for particles, the Standard Model. That rulebook can predict the muon's wobble in a magnetic field down to absurd accuracy. But when researchers actually measured it, first in 2001 and again in 2021, the numbers didn't match. The muon was wobbling more than it should. That tiny difference has huge implications. It could mean that there are hidden forces or unknown particles pushing on the muon, something completely outside of what we know. On the other hand, it might just mean our calculations of the rulebook need fixing. Either way, the strange result refuses to be explained away. 2. The fire mummies of Papua New Guinea. You wouldn't expect to find mummies in a rainforest. The constant humidity should rot a body in weeks. Yet the Anga people of Papua New Guinea developed a method that somehow preserved their dead for decades. Instead of drying them with salts, like in Egypt, the Anga placed bodies above a fire, cut them open at the joints, and drained the fluids. Once dried, the mummies were left perched on cliffs, where some are still visible today. What science can't explain is how they lasted. Heat and smoke should slow decay, but in a tropical climate, the preservation should have failed long ago. The Anga themselves no longer remember the origins of the ritual, and the only descriptions come from early outsiders whose accounts may not be reliable. 1. The disappearing birds of Barro, Colorado. Barro, Colorado Island in Panama should be a paradise for wildlife. At one point, over 200 bird species lived there. Yet, in just 100 years, a quarter of them have completely disappeared, and no one knows why. The mystery started after the Panama Canal was finished in 1914. Rising waters turned the surrounding valleys into part of Gatun Lake, resulting in the island. Some thought the change helped monkeys and quaddies thrive, wiping out birds by raiding their nests. But cameras later showed the real culprits were snakes, which had quietly been eating eggs all along. But still, even snakes couldn't explain the scale of the collapse. By 2000, 45 species were simply gone. They weren't migrating elsewhere, they weren't being replaced, and the ecosystem offered no obvious explanation. Their disappearance is something our best and brightest are simply struggling to comprehend. And that's it for today. But stop right there. Before you head out, let's test your memory real quick. In what month do zombie fires usually make their eerie return in the Arctic? Is it A, February, B, May, C, July, or D, October? Leave your answers down below. And you know what? While you're there, tell me which of today's strange cases you think deserves a list all its own. And if today's list left you wanting more of science's stranger side, well then you will love our related video. 25 times scientists created astonishing new states of matter. We covered a liquid that crawls up walls, a crystal that refuses to follow time, and even a form of matter scientists think could have come from another dimension. That link will pop up right here any second now. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Like, share, comment, subscribe, do all that as mentioned earlier, and I'll catch you next time. See ya.